race soon.
Good morning, Bronycon. How you all doing? Having a good time so far?
Yeah.
This is a packed house. This is fantastic.
I don't
But you're not
want to
here to see me. I know that. So without further ado, I'm going to start bringing up the important people.
Woo!
Are you excited?
Yeah!
I'm excited. I've never been so excited. All right. So this is the Creating Equestria panel. If you're here for Bronypalooza, you're about 12 hours too early. Who shall we bring up first? All right, I want to welcome to the stage, first and foremost, the person without whom none of us would be here, Bonnie Zackerley. Bonnie Zackerley. Keep it going, keep it going, keep it going. Also, please welcome to the stage, the one and only Jason Thiessen. The marvellous and Mephistophelian M.A. Larson. If he comes at you with a Sharpie pen, run. And of course, the one, the only, the legendary Lauren Faust.
There's more where that came from.
What a good crowd. This is just amazing. All right. So to kick things off, as I say, this is the Creating Equestria panel, so we're going to be talking about some of the technical notes and
Not more
stuff.
notes, please.
We're going to be talking about what goes into making the show and where things all began. And to begin at the very beginning, I want to talk about how My Little Pony, not Gen 4, but the entire franchise kicked off. And to do that, I have to take us back to the early 80s and go from there. So, Bonnie, if I may ask, how did this whole thing start?
It was a little sketch, and it was an idea that I always had. Well, a love of horses and an attempt to make a toy that I would have liked as a child.
Now I heard, I'm not sure if this is true or not, you wanted a horse when you were little, but you didn't end up with one.
Sadly, I never got my horse.
But if you had, none of this would have been possible, so I guess it's a good thing in the long term.
Probably not, probably not.
So you were working at Hasbro,
I was.
and it started with a sketch. Where did things go from there? How quickly did things move once you had made this sketch and once people, the higher-ups, sort of said, well, this is a good idea, we should go for this?
Very slowly. First you have an idea, then you draw it, then you make a nice presentation, and people shoot it down. And then you go back and you do another sketch the next year and present it, and people shoot it down. And then you do it again, and they shoot it down again, and then someone else comes up with the same idea, and they do it.
What?
That's pretty much it. No, they change it. They changed it, really. But you know, it's like you have to stick to your guns. If you know it's a good idea, keep pushing it, no matter how many times you get shot down.
Perseverance.
Indeed, yes, that's the answer. And eventually someone else will think it's also a good idea.
So from that toy line that then developed the show. although it was a film once. I am not an original. How many original Gen fans do we have in the audience? Now we've got a good number of them. You can do better than that. Come on, original Gen fans. So where did things go from there?
Well, I only did the first 6, and they didn't have great hopes for it. They didn't put a lot of money behind it, so I left. But they did produce it. It did very well. Then someone else designed it again and again and again. And then they decided they would like to make a movie or a TV show, and that's when Lauren came in.
So Lauren, yes, moving down to you. You were a fan of My Little Pony in your youth, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
When did it first come into your life?
I was 6, so like 1981-ish.
So you were there right at the beginning.
Yes.
Were you also another person who wanted a horse but didn't get one?
Yes. I still want a horse.
Come to my house.
So fast forward, I guess, what, 25, 26 years? It was around 2008, 2009 when you first started pitching Gen 4?
Yeah, that sounds about right, yeah.
So how did that go? Did you also run into some of the same roadblocks, the same having to pitch it over and over?
No, my roadblocks were before this one. I was working in animation, and I was constantly pitching cartoons for girls. And I would get a lot of feedback, a lot of good feedback. I mean, what I heard over and over again is like, this is great, we love it, but girls don't watch cartoons, so we don't want to make it. So then I got frustrated and I went, all right, well, nobody's going to tell me that girls don't like dolls. So I created a doll line briefly that was in F.A. Schwartz called Milky Way and the Galaxy Girls. Learned that the toy business is kind of worse than the animation business. Got a lot of like, we love your dolls, but we need you to make a cartoon of them. Face palm. But in the process of trying to get Galaxy Girls going, I got a meeting with Hasbro. I pitched Galaxy Girls to an executive there, and she didn't like Galaxy Girls, but she pulled out a DVD of My Little Pony and said, I haven't watched this yet, but I imagine it's probably pretty bad. And she said, can you watch it and see if you think there's something you could do with it? And so I took it and I watched it, and it was pretty bad. But My Little Pony was my favorite toy as a kid. And like, so finally that was like what opened the door for me, was to make something for girls, was to make it through toys. And then it actually, as far as the show goes, it went pretty easily from there. It took time. I came up with initial pitch, and they liked it out of the gate. They wanted me to create more materials, and that took about a year of development time before it finally got going. But the response in general was very good from the beginning, so that's when it got easier suddenly. But it did take time.
That's not usually the process, though. Generally, things don't go that smoothly, by the sound of it, in animation.
You know, it depends. It depends on who you're working for, really. You know, if you're lucky enough to get to a studio who loves your idea, they might give you a lot of creative freedom. That actually happened on the show I'm working on now, DC Superhero Girls, and Mitch too. That we get a lot of creative freedom, we don't get a lot of notes. But then you might work at another studio that they like your idea and they buy it, and you pitch it and they go for it, and then they want to change everything. And so it really depends on who you're working for, and I've kind of learned to not work with people who want to change everything. Just kind of stay
Good luck
away.
with that.
Yeah.
So as showrunner, when did the team first start getting assembled? When did Mitch come on board? When did Jason come on board?
When did you come on board, Mitch?
We had dinner in your hood. And
Yeah.
you pitched me the whole show. And then she asked me what I was doing, and I had just written one of my books. And I told her, about a pretty bad animation experience I just had. And I said, I hope I don't ever have to work in animation again. I just want to write books. And she's like, do you want to be the head writer in my new show? Yep.
And Jason, how about you?
Early on now, I think.
Me? I was working in Vancouver, up in Canada, and I was just called up by DHX, which at the time was called Studio B, and they said, we would be interested in you directing a show. Can you come in and take a look at it? And I said, sure. And so I looked at, they said it's My Little Pony, and I was like, I kind of remember that being kind of bad.
I'm sensing a theme here. Bonnie's sitting here thinking, hey.
Just same kind of thing that what Lauren was saying. But then they said it was a new version developed by Lauren Faust, and I had heard of her from the industry, and I was like, oh, wait a second, that might be actually good. So I looked at the Bible that you had created, and I got really excited about it. I could tell right away that there's a lot of love and care, and great writing, and great designs, and I just definitely was like, sign me up, I want to do this. This is going to be a great show.
Now, the show Bible was that collection, Lauren, that you were working on over the year of sort of sketches and plot ideas, that kind of material?
Yeah. Hasbro gave me a small budget to hire some of my friends, had a few kind of story jam sessions with some people I liked working with, who also created some art for me. My friend Paul Rudish, who runs the Mickey Mouse shorts for Disney right now, is a brilliant artist and storyteller, and he helped me out with some artwork and some ideas. In fact, I remember he came to me with a drawing of Pegasus ponies galloping across clouds and knocking the rain out of the clouds on the ponies below them. And that just made me go, all right, ponies make the world work. You know, that inspired that idea that they were the stewards of their world and that they had to create the weather and the seasons and make their world function. So I gathered these materials, I did my own sketches and drawings, and spent a very intense 6 weeks creating a 40-page Bible, which is really unusually large. But I had so much I wanted to say. What's that?
It was a really good read.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it thoroughly.
I'm still very proud of it. I feel like it's
great.
one of the best things I've ever done.
The Bible's amazing.
But it was descriptions of the characters, art of the characters, descriptions of the worlds and the types of stories that we would tell in this world. And even though that 6 weeks was really intense, it was still like several months again before we actually started on anything. But they really didn't ask for any changes. It was still like the basis of what the show turned into.
On the topic of world building, we have a wonderful question here that was submitted online by Jenny. Is Jenny in the audience? Well, they had a question about world building. It sounds like some of the rules of the world were generated by your sketches. Did you come into it with a sort of set of rules in mind that informed sketches? Did it work both ways? Or how did you develop really your rules for Equestria?
I come up with my ideas when I'm drawing. So I'll usually get like a big sketchbook that's dedicated to a project, and I'll just start drawing. And I started with the personalities and characterizations that I had assigned to the ponies that I played with when I was a little girl, my 6 favorite ones. Started drawing them, started thinking about who they were based on how I played with them, how they might relate to one another. And as I draw, the ideas just sort of come to me. Then when I start getting into the world building aspect, for me, everything is kind of about theme. So I knew I wanted it to be about magic, because for me, once unicorns and Pegasus were introduced into the pony line, I think that's when it really solidified for me as something that I loved as a kid. So I wanted it to be about magic. Hasbro wanted it to be about friendship.
Maybe somehow related to each other.
Yes.
Yeah, how magic and friendship could be related.
So bringing in those themes, wrapping it up in a horse theme as well, in that, so we named the land Equestria because equestrian means horse, and Ponyville was originally called Philadelphia. So kind of taking these themes that I want to stick with and these characters that I feel strongly about, and just kind of using them as puzzle pieces and fitting them together, never straying away from those themes and those characterizations, and then just letting it kind of grow in my head, and then eventually writing it all down.
And I think it's fair to say as well that some of the rules of the world, or the world in general, developed not just from the Bible, but also over the course of writing the show and animating the show. Could Mitch or Jason sort of discuss what you discovered about Equestria as you went about creating it?
Well, I remember having a meeting with you, Lauren, early on when we were talking about how do ponies pick things up, and that was the hardest thing. And the tendency in animation is to just have them stand on two legs and just have something stuck to their hooves.
I said no.
Yeah, you were very adamant about that. And then we were well, what if we just created some devices, some inventions that can do things for them, like hands? And again, we got no.
No. Horses don't do that.
Yeah, the horses don't do that.
They also don't drive cars at
Yeah, don't drive. They are cars, in a way.
They are
On their
cars.
back.
They're a vehicle and a character all in one.
Yep.
And so we had to really wrap our brains around, how are we going to make all these normal things, especially some of the things that were written in the script, things that they were doing, grabbing this and grabbing that. And I'm how do they grab things?
Like dogs with their mouths.
Yeah, with their mouths. But then they would be walking, talking, and holding objects. And I'm I just don't know what we're gonna do.
No, they talk like this because there's something in their mouth.
Yeah, we tried all kinds of stuff. So
It's adorable. Come on.
yeah, it is.
Right?
So it was.
I also didn't like them sitting in chairs. I had a
Yeah.
problem with that too.
So it was, but those kinds of limitations, those rules that limited us, actually forced creativity. And we had to really think around and out of the box, how do we make it feel natural, as if this is just the way they live every day, and also be clever in how they do things. Thankfully with Pinkie Pie, she can kind of balance something on her head and carry it that way, or even do something weird, hold it with her hair. Because her hair is so springy, she can hook stuff or grab it even prehensile, or just cheat and just cut to a mid shot and they just pick it up. It's already resting in their palm. Or they just toss it on their back or into a bag. So those are just all the things that we had to, get everybody on the team to start thinking because the tendency was to just stick it to the hoof, and be no, slap, bad.
It doesn't really work.
I'm just imagining sort of angry meetings. No, the hooves, they have to get, no, mouth. Just these.
They took the whips away from me.
So I want to talk about process. I want to make sure that we're all on the same page as to what the process is from getting to the show Bible to the finished product that we all love. I'm assuming everyone here loves the show, yes? So you start with the Bible. If I'm wrong on this, please do correct me. You start with the Bible, you write some scripts up. I made that sound so simple.
They write themselves, really.
They write them, yeah, it's very straightforward.
You push a button on the computer, write script.
He just puts a blindfold on and just taps away. I have to give Mitch nods. Okay, so you go from there. Once the scripts are locked, the voice actors come in and record the lines. And they have maybe some storyboards, they have some initial sketches, but they don't have finished animation that they're looking at, right?
No, we animate to their voices. So that we want to have a lot of freedom for the actors to, play with the characters and do unexpected things. And a lot of times in the record booth, we'll hear something funny that they did, and it'll change some nature of the shot that we're thinking of for that. Just the way they say something can improve it even more. So then we like to take that and play with it. If we had boarded it ahead of time, we'd be kind of limiting, what the possibilities could be there.
So
You'll do something like, here's the drawing, and that's the expression. Can you say something that matches the expression? And it doesn't work as well.
No.
And makes the actors mad.
So in some cases, it's usually, about a year between the actors recording the voices and then them actually hearing them on screen when the rest of us do? A year or so?
About a year, maybe 9 months.
Yeah, 9 months to a year.
Yeah. It's like birthing a baby.
And just as painful.
But a lot of people feel that pain.
So in that whole process, how do you balance the input from so many different people? Because you've got the writers with their input, you've got the animators with their input, you've got the actors with their input. How do you throw all of those ingredients in and make sure that you haven't got too much of one or
Let's
too
not
much of
forget
another?
Hasbro.
Oh yeah, Hasbro.
They have ideas.
Yes.
All the executives at the on the entertainment side, and then the brand people who want to have something to say as well.
Round of applause for the benevolent corporate overlords, please.
They'll throw you weird curveballs, like, in this episode we want you to put in a helicopter, because we have a helicopter toy that we're putting in the market. And we're like, a helicopter? This is a world of equestrian horses. They don't use helicopters.
I think we made a whirly-gig in one.
There was a
It was like a
whirly-gig.
helicopter contraption.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like, all right, I'll buy that. That'll
Yeah.
work.
Well, thankfully, that was set up in one of the early episodes. So then later on, they created a helicopter, and they were totally fine with it just being in one shot. And we're like, okay, where are we going to make this work? So we found an episode, and this was like all across the season. So there was an episode around that time where Twilight, I think, was learning to fly, and Rainbow Dash was giving her a little lesson. And along the way, she got distracted, and then she almost hit somebody, some pony, flying through. And that's where we sort of stuck a whirly-gig sort of pedal-powered helicopter thing. And they were happy with that, so we made it work. But that was the
Did
challenge.
anybody buy that toy?
I don't, yeah.
It didn't even work.
We got one.
Now, when you have an idea that you really, really believe in, that you want to get into that big stew pot, how do you get other people on board with that idea? Is it, again, just a matter of perseverance? Or, I know, Mitch, you had one particular line that you were willing to die on a hill for. Winter is coming? What was the story with that?
I wrote a very impassioned email to Hasbro about that line, because I don't even remember what episode it was. The weather factory is
Thanks for the
exploding.
memories. Thanks for the
As
memories.
they know.
The weather factory is exploding in a giant, if I remember right, like snowball heading straight for Ponyville. And clearly Twilight had to say, winter's coming. It had to happen.
Did it make it in the show?
Did.
Good.
They wanted to cut it because it'd be dated, and they were right. It is dated. But I was like, when are you going to use this line if not right now?
No, but you know what though? I mean, that's one of those, like, that's my favorite way to use pop culture references, that if somebody doesn't get it, it still makes sense.
Yes.
Like, that's the best way to do it.
Yeah,
So, it's not dated.
yeah, it still works.
Damn it.
As long as it's in context, works in the moment.
Right.
Yeah.
It's fine.
So you mentioned the creative process and Hasbro's input, especially to do with what they can market as a toy. I want to go back to the toy creation process, if we can. Bonnie, what's the interplay work between the toy creators and the people who make the show? I know the show came after your time, the original Gen, but maybe you can shed some light on the relationship between the two sides of the franchise?
I doubt it. I don't really know. I think it must have been a real juggling act somehow. When I was at Hasbro, they had an ad agency who did commercials, and I think eventually developed little videos and movies. But beyond that, I think it happened when they started their own network hub. So I don't know. I can't imagine it was easy going back and forth creatively with
What is
toy people and animators and creatives.
What tends to be the deciding factor on whether or not a toy is ready for market and makes it to market? That's the question, isn't it?
That is the question. If we only knew that. In the case of Pony, if you get it to Toy Fair, that's pretty good. But a toy can die at Toy Fair. When Pony was there, the sales force was mostly men at that time. Maybe it still is, it doesn't matter. But they would say, we can't sell this. It doesn't do anything. And it could have died right then and there. You have to have a champion. In the case of Pony, it was the marketing director, Steve Schwartz, who, really went to bat for it. And without him, it would have died.
So it doesn't sound like there's necessarily much trust in the imagination of the person playing with the toy. It has to be doing lots of dazzling lights and sounds and that kind of thing. There isn't trust that just a pony is sufficient to entertain?
Well, no. Well, I mean, they put a lot of money behind advertising, but in the end, it's the audience, it's grassroots, it's people who get it, and there were people at Hasbro who did get it, and there were people who bought it that got it, obviously, and and it's the fans that keep it going, and it kept it going all this time.
And I'm looking down the table at one person whose imagination was obviously sparked by these toys. Lauren?
Yes.
I'm just going through my notes here. This is a nice one. How do you deal, I guess, with rejection when you've had this wonderful idea and you've went to bat for it and you think it's fantastic, you really believe in it, and it just doesn't fly, you can't get anyone to champion it?
You put it in your pocket. Somebody else might like it later, and you come up with the next thing. It's, you just don't give up. I was asked about rejection at a panel recently, and I remember saying, if you want to do this sort of thing, you're going to have to accept that you are going to face rejection. We all do. You just have to be brave, face it, and keep moving forward afterwards. You can't let it stop you. That's the most important thing. So with your ideas, they can live later. There might be a better time for it, or a better studio for it, or someone else who's interested in it at another time. My husband, Craig McCracken, created the Powerpuff Girls. And that was his student film. Then he pitched it to Hanna-Barbera and made one short. It got focus tested very badly. He said he was on the other side of the two-way mirror and heard a little 12-year-old boy say, "Whoever made this should be fired." And he put it aside. He actually kind of gave up on it, but went on to do other things, and it didn't become a show until 6 years later. And then it became a phenomenon. So you just wait it out. You just keep trying.
Again, perseverance. That seems to be the theme I'm sensing here. This was a question online from a lot of people along that line. What are some of the sort of examples of the most crazy projects or ideas that didn't make it? Or are you still keeping those secret in your back pocket for a later date? And that's a question for all of you. Or I'll just call on someone.
Who wants to take it?
I don't think I can say that idea publicly.
Let's keep them safe for work.
It's just too crazy.
Nah, go on. We're all friends here, right?
Yeah.
actually made that up. I don't have anything to say.
Mitch, I know you've had some weird ideas. Come on.
That didn't get in?
You wanted one of the ponies to have a sharpie, right? Well, no, episode 100, all your crazy ideas went in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
I actually, I pitched an idea. Sorry.
Wings for
No.
Starlight.
I just had, I just remembered a one.
I think I got one.
I was related to Pony, actually. There was at one point there was going to be a DVD special. This was before Equestria Girls, and I remember they were trying to think of something to do for that. And I just wanted to I had this idea for an eclipse to happen where like Celestia and Luna would overlap each other in some sort of a once-in-a-lifetime moment and form a villain as a duo, like a two-headed thing, like something that was some sort of prophesized event. And then Twilight had to fight against her mentor, and it was like a real struggle for her. Nobody liked it. So
That would have been accurate.
I
one.
have one.
Please.
I still like this idea, actually. I had a Adult Swim concept I pitched. Again, girls don't watch cartoons, but it was called Lollipop's Sucky Life. And it was about a little strawberry shortcake-like girl named Lollipop who grew up in the land of Lollipopolis with her friends, the Candy Kids. But we're catching up with her when she's 18. And she's no longer sweet, but very bitter. She smokes candy cigarettes. And she goes to college, and when she gets to college, all the little cliques in college are like grown-up 80s toys, and they all do horrible things. I had like these things called the Bugabears, which used to be cute little bears with bee wings that would fly around the flowers and drink honey, and now they're giant grizzly bears, and they're the frat boys, and they chug honey like beer. And so like every little group, the flower children, were the hippies. Their villain used to be a guy named Weed, down at Lovin'. So Lollipop she was trying to find her place in the world because she didn't want to be sweet anymore, so she'd go around these groups and sort of experiment with horrible life decisions. But it was all under the guise of these just like super sweet 80s toys that went bad. I still like that idea.
I love it!
I think they do too.
I think it's funny, I don't know.
If you need a director for that show,
Let's pitch it.
let's do it. I'm not joking.
It sounds like you've got a willing audience here. An enthusiastic audience. So keep it in your back pocket for a little while.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe that can come around again.
So this is a random, non sequitur question, but I kind of like it, and it might be revealing. This is submitted by Logan B. If you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be?
I would be a curly willow.
Any particular reason? Your favorite tree, or?
No, because I like to make flower arrangements, and they look really good and weird. Sorry.
Oh, I think I stepped in that. I don't have a tree. I am a tree.
That'd be a helicopter. Exactly.
All right, see, I'm going to be boring. I'm the last one and I'm boring. I like weeping willows. They're pretty. Everybody
They got
likes
great
them.
hair.
What's that?
They got great
They
hair.
have awesome hair.
You get to hang out by
Great
ponds.
maze.
That's right.
That's true.
we've got kind of a two-part question here, or I'm going to ask it as a two-part, because it's two sides of the same coin. Pixel Grip would like to know what you feel your biggest accomplishment was during your time working on MLP from its very first inception as a toy line to Gen 4. And Waffles would like to know, I beg your pardon, we'll do that one in a minute. A lot of people would like to know if you could do something differently. So I guess not necessarily a regret, but if you could go back and do something differently, what would you choose to do differently? So biggest accomplishment and biggest thing you would do differently, because I'm not going to say regret.
Starting with me,
Please.
I think the biggest accomplishment was to get Pony to market in the first place. It's very difficult.
We're all glad that she did, right?
And it wasn't just me. I mean, it's a lot of people who were involved. Really, it takes a village. But I think if I were to change something, I always wanted Pony to be posable. I thought that would give it a nice, different element to it. And I don't know that Hasbro knew how to do it, or maybe it was too expensive, but I haven't seen it done in a nice way, and one that appealed to me at least.
Thank you. Jason?
My biggest accomplishment?
Biggest accomplishment and biggest thing you would do differently?
Well, when I first read the first script of the pilot, I remember sitting down and just going through this thing, and at the time I had thought, because we had done this little test way back, and I was like, this is going to be like a really cute, really nice, funny Saturday morning kind of cartoon. And then when I started reading your script, I kind of realized it's nothing like that. I was getting chills when I was reading it, and I was realizing this isn't a Saturday morning cartoon. This is a movie. This is a feature film, the way he had wrote it. And I just thinking in the back of my mind, I don't know if we can do this justice just as a TV show. I think we need to make this into a movie somehow. And I started thinking of it that way from that day on. And then I always kind of hoped that maybe it would end up becoming a movie down the line. So when I got to direct the feature film of the show, I felt pretty happy that that's where we took it to. So I would say that, making the movie was the biggest accomplishment. The thing I would do differently is everything. When I go back and I watch any episode that I directed, I keep finding all these flaws and things that I would do differently, and I just can't do that. There's always something like, we could have shot that differently, there's always something.
And you pushed the technology to the brink of what Flash could do, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, for the show, I remember when we were doing the test, I remember showing you the storyboard that I did for that I wish I brought that test along, actually. And you were saying, you can't do that in Flash. And it's too complicated, and I was like, just watch me. I had been working a lot in Flash at that time and was learning and all the little tricks and stuff, and I really wanted to push it to feel as much like classical as possible. I know it's really hard to do and it's a tall order. I did a lot of cheating, but that was something pretty tricky to do, and a lot of the crew weren't sure we could do it. And they were always looking at shots and things we were asking to do, and they're like, dude, I don't think we can get this done. And so we'd have to do workarounds all the time. At the time, my co-director, Woody, he's a genius with Flash, and he spent months on the build just of one pony that would be the build for the whole show. And he had learned so many tricks and little things that it was a really complex build that we then pared down, so it was understandable for most people.
Was it just a generic pony, or was it one of the specific characters?
It was, I think it was Twilight, but
so you're saying Twilight is best pony?
First pony. We actually had, it was kind of a generic, but that was built, it was based on her. So every pony was built off of that, and over time we were able to get different body styles and stuff, but we wanted to, like one pony to rule them all kind of thing.
Biggest accomplishment is probably, like, I learned a lot on the show. It was one of my first jobs. I'd only been doing animation for a couple of years when I got on the show, and one of the things I learned was adapting a style. There's only a few scripts to read when I started. I think I did the 10th episode. So there wasn't much to go on, but I read all those and just tried to get into that voice. And then from there, you get a lot of freedom to create the world as you go. That's why I like working on her shows, because you do create the world as the season progresses. It's not, I mean, there's a ton there in the Bible to go from, but then it kind of rolls out from there. But I would say probably Discord, because those meetings were amazingly fun, and the character came out really well.
Discord fans, I'm assuming.
But it was also sort of like quite an accomplishment earning Lauren's trust, because like constantly I'd go into these meetings and she'd reference Trouble with Tribbles or The Music Man or Q, and I'm like, I don't know what that is. I've never seen that. So yeah, she kept bringing me in for these meetings. She's like, you must have seen The Music Man. Nope. But yeah, so I guess that.
Biggest thing you'd change?
I have seen it many times now.
Yeah, we should probably clarify that you have seen all of those things
Since then, yes,
right?
I've seen all of those references.
So you don't need to attack him afterwards. It's all good.
I've seen all of John Delancey on Star Trek. I probably would have like paid more attention in those early days and like saved more stuff. Like the story cards would be cool to have those still. I never imagined me sitting here talking about it now. Otherwise, I probably would have kept more of that stuff and just kind of paid more attention.
There's a lot of things that I feel like are a big accomplishment. Just getting to make the show. It was my first show, and pitching my ideas and having all the yeses was a big accomplishment. Getting to bring life back into this property that I loved so much and meant so much to me as a kid. Just that. Getting to meet and work with Q was a big one for me. But I think the biggest thing is the reach that it had. Obviously, I never dreamt that something I came up with would have such a big effect on so many people. And that's by far the biggest accomplishment, the thing I'm most proud of. And the only thing that I think I would change is, I never dreamt the show would go on as long as it did. I didn't even think we would get a season 2. So when we got a season 2, I really pushed Hasbro to go like, is this the last season? Because I have a story to tell and I need to start telling it so we can have our big series finale. And they were like, oh, I don't know. So when we started breaking the stories for season 2, I decided, well, let's just, we have this world, we have these characters, let's just kind of tread water and just tell fun stories that aren't necessarily going anywhere. Then, eventually I moved on after season 2, and I really do wish that I had committed to the story that I wanted to tell. Even if the series would have lived on beyond my ending. So I think that's the one big thing I'd change is to get to finish the story that I was hoping to tell myself.
I think I speak for a lot of people here when I say that the story that you did get to tell is, as you said, an incredibly impactful and meaningful one for all of us here. So thank you. And that actually leads into the lovely question by Waffles, which was, MLP throughout the generations has changed many people's lives here at this convention, but what do you feel? Yeah, huge round of applause for that. Why not? you touched on what you feel the sort of largest impact that it's had on your life personally, but I'm wondering if each of you could talk about what the greatest impact it has had on your life has been. That was terribly phrased. I'll try that one again, shall I? What is the biggest impact that the My Little Pony world and your involvement in it has had on your lives?
I mean, just a practical one is I never could have sat in front of a room like this and said a single word before. I used to, in college, if it was like sitting in class going around saying your name, I would have like a panic attack and start sweating and turn red and like freak out. And now I can just sit here and chat with you guys. But it's like 100% But also just, one of the things I loved about the show so much is that it was so committed to its sincerity, and I continue to love that, and it just sucked a lot of cynicism out of me, I think, working on the show. So, thanks for that, you guys.
I actually have kind of a similar answer to yours. Like, you know, I remember early on, I think it was the second convention I'd ever been at as a guest. And I was asked to go out to do a panel, and I had never done a panel before, and I didn't know really what to do. I just expected it to be kind of organized like this, and you know, someone would ask me specific questions. And I got there, and it was a big room full of people, and they said, "Do you have any materials you want to project?" And I'm like, "Materials? What?" And then like, "Okay, well, you have an hour. There's your room." And I walked in, and I'm like, huh? I don't think there was really a chair or a table or anything, and I was like my first time sort of in front of a crowd of people, and it was like literally like my pants had just been pulled down, and I had to wing it, but not knowing at all what I was gonna say or anything, and I filled that hour, and that was like one of the most, you know, scary moments at the time that I could think of, and I got through it, and it was sort of like, oh, it's actually not that scary after all, you know? So it kind of, yeah, public speaking was a big change. And also just like with their cynicism, it felt very similar to me, like making a show like this really changed me as a person as well, just the way that I think and the way that I see the world. I see it through more of a pony lens now, less cynically overall, and it's very hard not to be cynical, you know, in this business. It just kind of makes you sometimes. And one of the other things that really changed was stability. In animation, there's not a lot of stability because you never know one job to the next. You know, you work 6 months on one thing and 8 months on another. You know, this show allowed for stability in my life. You know, right when we started the show, I had my first child, and you know, I didn't know how long this would go either, and I was kind of nervous. Like, I got a mortgage, I got kids now, like I got to maintain this. And the show kept going for 8 years straight, and it allowed for a lot of, you know, stability in my life, which I really needed, and allowed me to build a life with some, you know, comfort. So that definitely was a big change for me. And then, of course, meeting all of you guys and finding out how much the show really means to you really changed a lot of the way I see the world too. So not just the show, but like these conventions and you guys, major change, yeah.
Well, this whole phenomenon had really changed my life. It was 25 years after I created My Little Pony that I met any of the fandom. And it was shocking to me, and yet, you know, it kind of makes you think this is a great thing to have an influence, a positive influence, and to know that something you did a long time ago affected so many people. And I'm grateful to all of you for that.
I think we're all incredibly grateful to you.
And Lauren for creating the show, which really made Pony live this long, really.
So we've got time for a little bit of live Q&A. We're going to have a couple of roving moderators with mics. They should be out amongst you shortly. I want to make sure that we give priority to folks with accessibility passes and also kids, if they have any questions. But meanwhile, I want to ask one final question of all of you, which is, what's next for you all? What have you got going on? What would you like to plug, or just plans you have for the future?
DC Superhero Girls! Please watch it. Tell all your friends. It's really good.
Well, now we can get to the real reason you're all here, the Pennyroyal Academy series. Available for purchase. I just signed a deal to write a pilot for a television series based on that, so hopefully. And DC Superhero Girls.
I'm gonna say DC Superhero Girls for these guys. Everything I'm doing, I'm under NDA. I can't really say anything, but I got several things on the go, a few development projects that I'm hoping to get through if I'm not rejected too many times. I wrote a couple of movie ideas and such, and working on a project. Again, all NDA related, so stay tuned.
We'll look forward to it.
I am attempting to write children's books and illustrating them, and I think, Lauren, you should do a book on that wild concept you have.
Always.
I think it's a
Oh
limit.
my God,
I like
make
that.
it like a golden book? Oh my God, that would be brilliant.
Maybe the two of you can collaborate on it.
She's a better drawer than I am. And writer.
Sorry.
Sell the book and then the show will come after.
That's usually how it works.
Go with it.
All right, so we've got a queue going here, and we've got some folks making sure that the questions are all appropriate. Let's keep it obviously safe for work, and they can't answer specific questions about future projects. But please go ahead.
Well, it's me, you know I'm gonna pick it. Hi everybody, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Forward Progress. Hi. Yay, people I know. Come see my panels this weekend. Anyway, and buy Mitch's books.
What's the question?
General question, especially for Lauren, but anybody can chime in kind of in general things. For when you're creating a show like, say, DC Superhero Girls, when you're going to create a new series now or get involved in a project, knowing that this is now a part of your life, how much does that impact your thought process of, oh my gosh, I created something that touched so many people, how am I going to take what that did and put it into what I'm doing next?
You know, you have to go in without those sort of expectations because you could get disappointed. I just focus on the content. I just want to make something good. You know, I love that the work that I do is meaningful to people, but I don't go in there going, I'm going to make this meaningful to people. It's the old writer thing, right? What you know. So I go in there with my own thoughts and feelings and experiences, and I surround myself with people with similar thoughts and feelings and experiences, and you just kind of hope that it resonates with people. But you can't, if you have a goal beyond just telling excellent stories, you're shooting too far. You just have to start with excellent stories, and whatever comes afterwards is just the cherries on top.
Awesome. I just wanted to say a big thank you for the work you've done. I actually met my fiance through the fandom here, so if it weren't for the work you guys, I proposed to her 2 weeks ago on stage at Bronycon.
Oh, congratulations.
So if it weren't for the work you guys did, we never would have met, so thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for your question. All right.
Lauren, this one's for you. If you retained creative control of the show, do you believe at any point you may have introduced another mainline character, a main 7 or a Starlight Glimmer-esque character?
I had plans for more bad guys. So like those types of characters were something that I wanted to bring into. But you know, I mean, as you're on anything you're making, as you tell the stories and work with your team, you know, new characters just sort of present themselves and are just sort of like appear naturally. And I prefer to let it go in that direction rather than going, oh, I'm going to create new characters now. You just say, what stories do I want to tell? What stories do we like telling together? Hey, it looks like we probably need a new character to help tell that story.
All right, thank you. And you should totally come back to Slash MLP sometime, and we'd love to have you again.
Hi guys. I want to hear your best piece of advice. I want to hear your best piece of advice for anyone trying to write or start off their own television series.
The silence is telling.
The best advice I like to give people is when you're pitching your idea, you've got to go in there and you got to talk to these people like it's the most brilliant idea they've ever heard. Like whether you got to figure out a way to work up your nerve to just go in there just so excited and so confident, even if you're not, because the confidence that you emanate rubs off on them, and like and they somehow are more interested in it as long as you're giving it to them in the most exciting way possible.
Yeah. They're looking for any way that they can to say no. Don't give them any reason to say no. It has to be like all signs point to yes kind of thing. Because if there's a way they can squeeze in a no, they'll find it. But yeah, definitely going in with the confidence, and also you feeling that confidence. Like if you're not sure, it's gonna come through. So you have to really make sure that you know everything about it, and any question could be asked of you, and you have an answer for it that you feel truly confident about, and that will really help you a lot.
I'm gonna do a hybrid of their answers. Like, I think it's safe to say a lot of writers and artists don't go into it because they're big extroverts. Like, there's a lot of introverts in this business, but if you're gonna pitch, you have to pretend you're an extrovert, like gregarious, and full of confidence, even if you're not. You also have to be able to network, which also involves those skills that you may or may not have. So you have to just kind of like find them somehow. And then to Jason's point, I heard a really good piece of advice, which is, go in with your 10-page Bible and your 15-minute pitch, but have a 2-hour, 100-page Bible of your own ready in your head.
Yeah.
So you don't overwhelm them with information, but anything they ask you, you've got it.
Yeah, in the beginning you kind of have to keep it short, because there's sometimes you want to just rattle off the whole idea, and like an hour later their eyes are rolling back and they're snoring. It's like you got to come out with the most basic ideas, and as cheesy as this sounds, they tend to like sound bites. So like when you say things like, it's like Avengers meets, Snoopy, then they're like, oh, I get it now,
That actually works.
It's dumb and we hate it, but it really works for them. It helps put it in a pocket for them. It helps them understand it. So like silly, and even like taglines are really good. If you just go like, if there was going to be a poster on a bus stop, what would the little tagline at the bottom be? Like those help too.
So we're going to need to leave it there, I'm afraid. If you still have questions, and I see that many of you do, you may be able to get a chance to ask them at some of the other panels that our wonderful guests will be at over the course of the weekend. Also, they'll be around for autographs, so maybe you can get your question in then. But can we please get another huge, huge round of applause for
See you at the autograph booth.